Today, we're diving into the story of one of ancient Egypt's absolute titans, a man who reshaped his world through sheer force of will and brilliant strategy, Thutmose III. You know, historians have a nickname for him, and it's a big one, the Napoleon of ancient Egypt. And honestly, they're not wrong. This guy's military genius was off the charts, his ambition was legendary, and his impact was felt for centuries.
But here's the thing. It's easy to just focus on the warrior part. He was so much more than that. I mean, we're talking about an incredible builder, a really sharp statesman. He didn't just win battles. He forged an empire that brought Egypt to the absolute peak of its power.
And maybe the most fascinating part of his whole story, it's how it all started. He wasn't exactly handed the keys to the kingdom from day one. So you have to wonder, right? How does a prince, stuck in the shadows for decades, become this legend?
Okay, so his path to power was, well, it was complicated. It all starts in the shadow of one of Egypt's most incredible female rulers, his stepmother, the Pharaoh Hatshepsut. So here's the setup. His dad, the Pharaoh, dies. Thutmose is just a kid, way too young to rule. So his stepmother, Hatshepsut, steps in. But, and this is a huge but, she doesn't just act as a placeholder, no way. She declares herself Pharaoh, and for over 20 years, she's the one in charge, while the actual heir is just waiting.
And you've got this incredible split-screen thing happening. On one side, you have Hatshepsut's reign, which is all about peace, massive trade expeditions, and building these incredible monuments. And on the other side, you've got young Thutmose. He's not just sitting around. He's in the background, getting a top-tier military education. He's learning how to be a soldier, just biding his time.
So, after 2 decades of this, 20 years of watching and learning from the sidelines, what do you think is going to happen when this highly trained military mind finally gets a taste of real power? Well, the answer is going to shake the foundations of the ancient world.
And he didn't have to wait long to prove himself. Almost right away, his power is challenged. His response? It's going to go down in history as a masterpiece of military strategy, the Battle of Megiddo.
See, the second Hatshepsut is gone. A bunch of kings over in Canaan and Syria, they see their chance. They figure, hey, this new guy, he's been on the sidelines his whole life. He's probably weak. So they rebel. Big mistake. They had absolutely no idea who they were dealing with.
And the reason we know so much about this battle in such incredible detail is because Thutmose basically had the whole story put up on a giant billboard, carved right into the temple walls at Karnak. It's literally a play-by-play, one of the first and most detailed battle accounts we have from anywhere in history.
So his plan was genius, but it was also completely insane. His own generals were begging him, take the safe route, go around the mountains. But Thutmose, he looks at this tiny, narrow mountain pass that the enemy thinks is impossible for an army to get through, and he says, that's the way we're going. He leads the charge himself, and his army just pops out right behind the enemy lines. Total shock, total panic. The victory wasn't just a win, it was a rout.
But Megiddo, that was just the opening act. That one incredible victory kicked off 2 solid decades of non-stop campaigning. This was the start of him forging the biggest empire Egypt would ever know.
I mean, just try to wrap your head around this. We're talking at least 16 major military campaigns over the next 20 years. That's almost 1 a year. The guy was relentlessly on the move, always pushing Egypt's boundaries outward. And the results? Whoa. They were staggering. The Egyptian empire suddenly stretched all the way from the Euphrates River, that's in modern-day Iraq, down deep into Sudan. He single-handedly upgraded Egypt from a major regional player to a certified world superpower.
And all of this conquering had a massive effect back home, as you can imagine. A river of wealth, we're talking gold, copper, cattle, you name it, just starts flooding into Egypt as tribute. See, this wasn't just about conquest for conquest's sake. This was pure economics. This was the fuel for his imperial engine.
All right, so you've got all this cash pouring in. What do you do with it? For Thutmose, the answer was simple. You build. You build to honor the gods, and let's be honest, you build to make sure no one ever forgets your name. That treasure wasn't just piling up in some storeroom. Nope. It was the funding for one of the biggest building sprees Egypt had ever seen. It turns out, Thutmose the warrior was also Thutmose the master builder. And a big part of his motivation was religion. Thutmose was convinced that the chief god, Amun-Ra, was the reason for all his success on the battlefield.
So, to say thanks, he funneled a ridiculous amount of money into Amun-Ra's main temple at Karnak, basically turning it into a giant thank you card to the gods.
Probably his most famous project there is the festival hall, known as the Akhmenu. And it's amazing because it's like a snapshot of his entire empire. The walls are covered in carvings of all the weird and wonderful plants and animals his armies encountered on their campaigns. It's part place of worship, part war memorial, and a huge piece of propaganda all rolled into one. It basically screamed, "We own the world."
So let's step back. After all the fighting, all the building, what's the final legacy of Thutmose III? What did he really leave behind?
Because it's so easy to just get stuck on the warrior label, right? But that's really only one side of the coin. The guy wasn't just a wrecking ball, he was a master administrator. He knew how to actually govern an empire. He set up loyal leaders in conquered lands, he created a system to manage all that tribute, and he knew when to stop fighting and start talking.
And get this, he was on the throne for 54 years. 54! That kind of stability is almost unheard of. It gave him the time to lock in all his achievements and really cement Egypt's power. When he died, the empire was at its absolute undisputed zenith.
So his impact is just immense. There's no denying it. He's the one who made Egypt a world superpower. He literally wrote the playbook on how to be a great pharaoh, a playbook that guys like Ramesses the Great would be studying for centuries. He absolutely secured his spot as one of the greatest kings in all of history.
Which really leaves us with one last big question. When you put it all together, the warrior, the builder, the statesman, you really have to wonder, was Thutmose III the single greatest pharaoh of them all?